Hey everyone, this is Aubrey.
And this is Melody.
And we want to welcome you to our new podcast,
Mostly Macabre. So how have you guys been since last time we recorded?
I've just been busy. I've been trying to wrap up Bella's last year in elementary school. She's going into middle school, so yeah.
She's going to be a middle schooler.
Hence all that attitude I just told you about. Yeah. She's got it's the end of the year, stuff. She's got her big
You're
field
gonna have
trip.
your hands full with her attitude.
Yeah. And then there's cheerleader tryouts for middle school. So it's just weird. I was so excited. I was like, oh my God, I am one of those parents where I went to, the Zoom meeting for the cheerleading team to get all the information. Mm-hmm. And I downloaded the cheer and because now it's so much better than when I was younger. They just show you on a video and you can practice and learn. And I'm like,
oh, cool.
We didn't have that. We had to memorize. I used to write things down and to memorize the movements. I'm like, oh, this is so much better now. And I was getting so pumped. I'm not even kidding you. I'm embarrassed. I'm a dork.
You're going to be such a cheer mom.
I didn't even know I was a cheer mom until I started to be all right, Bella, so here's what we're going to do. And I'm like, I will help you. And I had that fire inside, burning. I was like, oh my God, I'm so excited. And I was like, holy crap, who am I?
What am I
You're going to be like
into?
Kris Jenner. You're doing great, sweetie.
No, I'm going to be straighten those arms, smile bigger. It was so, yeah, I was like, tighter, Bella, you got to snap it. It's so, oh my God. And then I just heard myself and I'm like, I can't believe I didn't expect this to come out of me.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, so there's a lot going on. And there's Ryder who's just with his new Xbox I got him for his birthday. He's just been I've had to cut him off here and there.
Locked in his room, basically?
Pretty much. And I'm
when did you get that for him?
His birthday was April 4th.
Oh.
So that was his big, he's wanted it for a while. So I was like, all right, that's a good birthday gift. And I got that for him, so.
Oh, it's so good that he didn't have one before. I
waited a long time. I tried
That's
to.
good.
But now he's so addicted.
AJ's always had an Xbox because Jay loves Xboxes.
Yeah.
So AJ's always had one.
See, Jason, the kid's dad isn't into video games. I think if he was, he probably would have been into it sooner.
Oh, yeah, it definitely trickles down.
Yeah, and we put it off as long as possible because it's so addictive.
Call of Duty is the biggest one. It's so violent.
No, we don't let him play that one.
No,
He does
AJ
Fortnite,
doesn't play very
Minecraft,
violent ones. Those.
Roblox, stuff like that.
He likes Madden. It's a football one, I think.
Yeah, it's a football one. And then Ryder has I think he has a the Lego people, those games.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, I mean most of them are at his dad's house on that set. Mine, I didn't get the one that you put the actual games in. I got the one that you can just download digitally.
I don't know the difference.
Yeah, I had to do a lot of homework. I called my brother multiple times. I texted him. I was like, "Is this good?" What? And then I learned. I'm like, "Oh, wait a second. You have to buy rechargeable batteries because these things die." And I didn't know that
the controller.
For the controller,
you can also buy.
Oh yeah, that's right. Jay has rechargeable batteries.
Well, it's a wireless one, and I just put in normal batteries. And then he's like, "My remote's dead," and I was like, "Wait a second, that was fast."
Yeah.
And then
you're gonna go through a lot of batteries if you don't buy rechargeable
my neighbor upstairs,
ones.
her son, he was like, "No, he sent me what I needed," and I was like, "Oh," so I went and bought the rechargeable with the cord that you can charge them up. So I was like, I didn't even think of that because I stopped playing video games at Super Nintendo. Donkey Kong was where I ended. Super Mario?
Have them when we were kids. We had a Sega Genesis, and then my brother got a Game Boy, but he was such a game hog that I rarely got to play. So I just kind of lost interest in it.
Yeah.
Was it the small skinny one or was it
he had a little yellow Game Boy Color.
Oh, see, because you're younger. I remember, okay, so we had the original Nintendo with the square remote and Duck Hunt, which is amazing. Remember, you'd sit in front of your big TV that sat on the floor, and you'd shoot the duck, and you'd clink the TV because you'd get into it and you'd hit it, see? And then when you missed the dog would mock you, and go back down.
And the TV would flash every time you shot.
Yep.
I didn't have
that. Was the best. And then it went to Super Nintendo. And then I don't know what happened.
Nintendo 64. That was
I kind of stopped at Super Nintendo. My brothers probably went into it more. I was over it. But then we also had the original Game Boy. That was that big gray fat one with like the green screen. And Mortal Kombat you'd play all the time. And then when Playboy Color came out, that was like a huge deal.
Playboy Color?
That's what you had. You don't even know.
You said Playboy Color.
Oh, Playboy.
She was watching Playboys in color.
Oh, okay. And
Game Boy, Playboy.
That led to your Hooters career.
There we go. Oh my God. I've been watching that Playboy, what's it, The Secrets of Playboy? Playboy Color. Because it used to be black and white. It's so funny. Game Boy Color. Oh my God. That's hilarious.
I hope you got that
covered. And we're on. Today, I'm going to do my story on Bobby Joe Long, also known as the classified ad rapist.
Ooh, tell me more.
And I will. So, Bobby Joe Long was born Robert Joseph Long on October 14th, 1953 in Canova, West Virginia. His parents were Joe Long and Louetta Lucas. They married when Joe was 23 and Louetta was 17. And then 1 year later.
Young.
Yeah. And then 1 year later, they had Bobby. Yeah, very young. They divorced in 1955 before he was even 2 years old. And and then Bobby and Louetta moved to Fort Lauderdale, Texas, Florida.
I was like, I didn't know Texas had a Fort Lauderdale.
I got Texas from Florida, where Louetta had some family. Okay. She had to work being a young single mom. She had to work long hours just to make ends meet. So Bobby was
never easy.
No, and Bobby was left with babysitters for most of the time. Her landlord and her landlord's family were actually her babysitters. Quite
her landlord?
Yeah, her landlord. Yeah, and the landlord's family. So they helped her out a lot, and he was with them quite a bit. So
not the family that she moved to Fort Lauderdale for?
Yeah. Isn't that interesting? They didn't go into that very much, but apparently her landlord watched him more. I thought that was weird too. Like, you move there for family.
That is interesting. Apparently they're not super there close for you.
Yeah. So Bobby Joe had suffered from multiple accidents and head injuries as a child. At the age of 4, he was at the beach with his mother, and a wave pulled him under, nearly drowning him.
Oh my goodness. At what age?
4.
4.
At 5 years old, he was swinging on a swing set, fell off, was knocked unconscious, and a stick pierced his eyelid.
Oh my God.
A year later, at 6, he fell off his bike into a parked car, again knocking him unconscious, and losing several teeth.
Poor baby.
So it's like once a year he's getting a good head injury.
He needs a helmet.
He needs a helmet all the time, yes.
At all times.
At all times. The same year that happened, when he was 6, Louetta and Joe remarried, so they moved back to West Virginia, where he had to finish the last few weeks of first grade in West Virginia.
Wait, so they broke up and then they got remarried?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm. This is kind of a little theme, kind of, for a while. So anyway, he had to finish just a couple weeks in a new school for first grade, and he actually ended up failing first grade and being held back. So their marriage didn't last very long. So
this
second time, and she ended up moving back to Florida with Bobby. At the age of 7, he fell off a pony, hit his head.
Damn it, Bobby.
And was dizzy and nauseous for over a week. So
over a week?
Over a week. That's what was, yes.
I think that warrants a doctor's visit.
Yeah, for over a week. Around that time, his behavior started to change. So it started to decline. He was starting to have altercations with classmates and family members.
At 7?
7 years old, yeah. And he really struggled in school. So I guess back then, they didn't really know about ADHD. Nowadays, he would have been diagnosed with ADHD. Back then, he just struggled unknowing, what was going on. So he definitely had ADHD, and it was really hard for him, along with all those head injuries. So, I mean...
A stick through the eye will do it.
Yeah. In 1961, 8-year-old Bobby was hit by a car.
Again?
Every year he's getting injured. He hit the car the first time. The second time,
the car came back and hit him.
Yeah. So he hit his face on the bumper, knocking him unconscious, and he was in the hospital for just a few days. At 9, he was climbing a fence, fell off, hit his head, and had stitches on the left side.
So they're getting to know him at the hospital.
So they know him well.
He's a frequent flyer.
He's a frequent flyer. He has had a lot of hits to the head. This poor kid. This poor cranium, yeah. And he's already struggling.
He needs to stay on the ground. Why is he climbing fences?
And the funny thing is, it's not like he's doing anything that normal kids don't do. It's not like, oh, someone watched that kid. Everything that he's doing
normal
is like
stuff. Riding ponies, going into the beach,
riding a bike. But he just seems to be very accident prone, very clumsy.
Oh my
exactly.
gosh.
So Bobby needs a permanent helmet. So by the time he was 10, he was really bullied at school, between having struggles with learning and his peers, and then also his appearance. His jaw was deformed from all of his injuries, and he was missing teeth. So socially, it really started to take a toll on him. Also, he was born with Klinefelter syndrome, which is a genetic condition caused by an extra X chromosome, and this condition creates like an excessive amount of estrogen production, which causes a man to grow breasts during puberty, and plus other things. I mean, like
Bobby needed a bra and a helmet.
A bra and a helmet, pretty much.
Poor Bobby.
And didn't help him socially. So he was teased relentlessly, and he actually underwent breast reduction surgery. And in one place I read that they took, like when they did the reduction, it was 6 pounds that they removed.
Yeah, 6 pounds.
That's
a lot.
I had to throw that in there, so it wasn't like a small reduction.
No, he had them hitters.
Yeah. So I mean, right at that time, 10 years old, all the way to about you're starting to get into puberty age. Everyone's teasing you.
At 10 years old, 6 pounds of breast tissue.
No. They didn't say the reduction was at 10. I'm just saying it starts to decline. Like he was already having a real rough go, and then like the social aspect of it really starts to hit home. So his relationship with his mother was described as dysfunctional. It depends on where you read. Some people said that she was not very attentive. Other places said that she always denied that she was, neglectful. And some people said she was a great mother. Due to their financial situation, he had to share a bedroom with his mother. So he slept in her bed until he was about 12 or 13.
I'm wondering, because you said that there's a whole financial situation going on, how they paid for this breast reduction. Do you think that's something that his mom worked her ass off to pay for, or is that something that's
probably something insurance covered, considering it's a condition? Yeah, because it's not cosmetic, if you really think about it. Yeah, but no. So yeah, it was probably. They didn't say who paid for it, but
I assumed it wasn't out there. The information is just something that I was
probably
wondering.
Something insurance covered, considering it's a condition like medical. So his mother was known to be a very beautiful woman, and being young and very pretty, she worked in bars. She worked long hours to make ends meet.
All right.
Thank you, Kevin. Where she would meet men, and sometimes she'd bring them home. When she did, she'd make Bobby sleep on the couch. So around that time, his resentment toward his mother started to increase. So basically, and he started to become very verbally abusive to her.
Yeah. What age is this that he's
around 13?
13.
So puberty age, it started to it started to escalate more. So then at 13, Bobby's disturbing behavior did not stop. It's just kind of continued from there. At 13, he shot the family dog in the genitals because he was angry that his mother gave the dog a special cut of meat for dinner.
What?
And only gave him a burger.
Only a burger?
Yeah. At 15, he was accused of stealing a car from a friend, but the charges were dropped, so he didn't end up getting in trouble for it. At 17, he was arrested for being in possession of stolen property. Again, he did get in trouble for that one.
What did he steal?
They didn't say. Because I was kind of wondering myself, like, someone had to have probably reported it, and they found it on him, so he got in trouble for it. At 18, he was accused of raping a girl, but there was not enough evidence to prosecute him, and again, he did not get in trouble for it. So we're starting to see a little pattern here. Yeah. And then he decided to join the army. Which back in the day, that's what criminals did.
A lot of people did, yeah.
Yeah.
Really?
I guess
when they don't know what to do with themselves, they join the army.
He joined the army, and while he was in the army, he earned his GED because he had dropped out of school his sophomore year. He had dropped out, tried to go back, and then dropped out again. So he at least got his GED. Then Bobby married his longtime girlfriend, Cynthia, who he had been dating since he was 13. They were 13 years old, and they ended up having 2 children, a boy and a girl. I didn't find their names, and I don't really want to say their names because they're children, and
they had nothing to do with this.
Exactly. So early in the marriage, Bobby Joe was involved in a serious motorcycle accident because you know what? Time had just gone. He was due for another.
Yeah, it's supposed to be
another head injury.
Exactly. Too good for too long.
Too good for too long. Shattering his helmet.
Oh, he had a helmet.
He finally wore the helmet, and then the impact from his skull hitting the helmet and hitting the asphalt shattered the helmet, and he was hospitalized for several weeks. And he was plagued with these blinding headaches and bouts of rage while he was recovering. Cynthia later claimed that his temperament changed and that he was always short-tempered, but after this, he was starting to become physically abusive with her and very impatient with his children. He also developed a strangely overt, compulsive, and dangerous sex drive, insisting that Cynthia have sex with him every time she visited him at the hospital. And once he was discharged...
While he's in the hospital?
Yes, in the hospital. And then when he discharged at home, he insisted that she sleep with him twice a day. Also, the nurses had noted that he would masturbate 4 to 5 times a day, even when he was in a cast. So
what kind of cast was it?
I don't know. They did not specify what kind of cast he was in. So basically his sex drive after this head injury amped up, his rage. His personality kind of changed. So after that accident, he was medically discharged from the army, and he decided to go to school and get his AS degree and become an x-ray technician.
Okay.
He had a hard time holding down a job because... basically, he was weird. I mean, he was good at his job. They did say that he was good at his job and that he was knowledgeable and capable. But he would talk about sex a lot with his coworkers, male and female.
Oh, that's not good.
Yeah, to like a weird degree.
Yeah, that's not good water cooler talk.
No. And then he would also... he got in trouble because females that were coming in to get x-rayed, he was having them take their clothes off unnecessarily. So they reported him, and they ended up firing him for that. So there was that. So because he was not a stable worker, they moved around a lot, and eventually Louetta and Joe, they ended up back together but not married later on. They ended up helping... Bobby Joe and Cynthia buy a house to give them stability.
That's nice of them.
Yeah. So, unfortunately, though, Bobby's anger and violence got worse and worse towards Cynthia, and while her children watched. And in 1980, she filed for divorce. The rejection enraged Bobby Joe. Like, he's already got woman issues.
Yeah.
Between his mom, and then he's with her for so long, and she leaves him, and that just kind of set him off completely.
And it just seems like he's becoming more increasingly unpredictable as well.
Exactly. And he started taking his anger and violence out on other women. So he moved in with a female friend, Sharon Richards, who later accused him of rape and battery. And again, there was not enough evidence, and they didn't prosecute him. So
he's starting to think, awful. I can get away with this, probably.
Exactly. There's like such a pattern.
This is easy to get away with.
Shortly after that, he began his violent string of rapes in the Miami, Fort Lauderdale area from 1980 to 1983, he would find his victims in the classified ads or even houses that were for sale. He'd find them selling small appliances, and he'd show up and see if it was a house, just a woman home alone. And he would threaten them with a knife, tie them up, and brutally rape them. He was tried and convicted of these crimes, but requested a new trial, and it was granted. Now, I couldn't find under what circumstances he requested a new trial, but it was granted. And later, the charges were dropped.
Man.
Wow.
During that time, he had committed up to 50 rapes.
How do they know that it was 50?
Well, afterward, he told them. So during the time, he had committed up to 50, in the classifieds, raping at least 50 women.
Oh, that's awful.
He then moved to Long Beach, California to take a welding class and started dating a 17-year-old girl who lived across the street from him.
17?
17, yes.
How old is he at this point?
He's probably almost 30. I know he got divorced when he was 27. So again, he started contacting women through the penny saver or the classified ads. And when he would show up to see whatever it was that they were selling, he'd ask to use their bathroom, pull out a rape kit, and then brutally rape them.
Oh my gosh.
He was never prosecuted for those crimes in California. And then he ended up moving back to the Tampa Bay area, to Tampa. In the fall of 1983, Long was charged with calling and sending inappropriate photographs and sexually explicit letters to a 12-year-old girl in Tampa. Now, how he knew this girl, I don't know.
Yeah.
Everywhere I looked,
How did he get her information?
I don't
Pick
know
this
how he
one out
met
of all
her.
the 12-year-old girls.
I think they kind of, her name was never out there, which probably because she's a minor, but also maybe the connection was too close, and that's why it's not out there. So, maybe you could narrow down who she was, but everything I read just said that a 12-year-old girl from Tampa and never gave anything else. Guess how long
I'm glad that they were able to keep her information so under wraps, especially for that time.
Yeah. Well, it was easier back then without the internet,
Right.
But yeah, so they definitely kept it under wraps. Guess how long he went to prison for? Let's play this game.
Oh, God. It's going to piss me off.
Yeah,
6 months?
Kevin?
I'm going to say under a year, probably.
He went to jail, serving 2 days in prison.
Oh, my
2 days.
And 6 months of probation. Disgusting.
Wow.
You go to jail longer for drug charges.
Right.
So, 2 days in jail, 6 months probation.
I feel like it's always been like that, where rape is just too easy to get away with.
That's pedophilia. That's more than, So as you can see, he's just progressing. As time is going on, he's getting worse. He's escalating. It's getting more aggressive. The acts are getting worse and worse.
Well, he's been getting away with it. He's probably been more.
He's getting
brave.
away with
he's
it.
getting braver.
And also it's that's how it happens. It escalates. They need more. The more they do, the more they need. So then on Mother's Day, May 13th, 1984, 2 boys were playing outside and found the body of Lana Long. Lana Long was 19. She had moved to the United States with her family 10 years before her death. She lived in LA and was working as a go-go dancer when she met a man named John Corcoran. John was 35 years older than her, but they hit it off, and she decided to move to Tampa, Florida with him. After a few months of living in Tampa and not working, she got bored and decided to go back to go-go dancing. So she took a part-time job at the Sly Fox Lounge on Nebraska Avenue.
Have we heard of it, Kevin?
He's a regular.
I'm a connoisseur, but I do not know that one.
I don't know that one. I don't even know if it's still around. I know Nebraska Ave.
I know
personally,
Nebraska. I've heard of it.
Yeah.
Everybody knows Nebraska.
Yeah.
If you're from Tampa,
You know that.
It has
yeah.
a reputation.
Exactly. She was very well liked. She was described as a pretty petite girl who was bubbly, fun, and had an appealing personality. She did, however, have a problem with addiction and liked to drink and use cocaine. One of her favorite places to go after work was Cece's. It's a bar on Fletcher Ave. And she didn't have a car, so she would walk there a lot. Also, she would try to get rides from friends and sometimes customers. So she had those blurred lines with the customers where she felt comfortable enough to get in the car with them.
Well, she probably saw them often, so maybe it was easy to trust them because you see them all the time.
So one night while she was walking down Nebraska, Bobby Joe spotted her and offered her a ride. She accepted and got into the car. As soon as he got her in the car, he pulled out a knife. And he tied her up. He drove to a remote area, and he brutally beat her, raped her, and then strangled her. He left her face down with her hands bound behind her back and her legs spread so far apart. Like, he posed her.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah. Very demeaning, very just, everything about it was very angry.
Yeah.
And, like, they said her feet were measured 5 feet from one heel to the other.
Oh my gosh.
And that it looked like, in order to even get her in that position, like, you would have had to, like, break her hips. Like, it was very gruesome.
Goodness.
Yeah.
I can't imagine.
The investigators, Captain Gary Terry and Detective Lee Baker, could tell that the scene was unique. And after analyzing everything, they were thinking, we need to send this evidence to the FBI, because they had a feeling that they were going to need some help with whoever that killer was. So they bagged up the rope, the scarf, and took impressions of tire prints that they found at the scene. 2 weeks later, a construction worker found the body of 22-year-old Michelle Denise Sims. She was also brutally murdered.
So 2 weeks after the first one?
This is when they found her body, at a lover's lane in Plant City. It was reported that the scene was so shocking and gruesome that the construction worker that found her was crying. They actually described it as weeping when the police showed up.
Oh my goodness. You know it had to be bad.
Yeah. Oh, it was pretty. Even the Captain Bill Miller, Captain Terry, Sergeant Randy Latimer, and crime scene examiner Lee Miller described it as ghastly. And there was blood everywhere.
It sounds to me like he was getting something out of leaving these bodies posed in that way to get like a shock effect out of whoever found them.
At least
he was
for
enjoying
Atlanta.
it.
Oh yeah, no, he definitely he was totally getting some sort of gratification out of all of this. Like, he was taking out his personal feelings, his anger, whatever it was he had. This was totally something he was getting something from, you know? They said that the scene was so bloody that she was lying nude on her back with dried blood caked to her face and neck, that her throat had been slashed several times so deep that it, like, severed arteries or severed a large blood vessel or something. That's what they said. She had a rope wrapped 3 times around her neck and tied off with a hangman's slip knot. Her arms...
seems excessive.
Oh, yeah. No, he was, like I said, these are, like, very gruesome crime scenes. Her arms were tied at the wrists and secured to her body. Her green T-shirt had been ripped or cut down the front, and all she had on was an anklet and stud earrings. Her blood-stained white jumpsuit and her white pantyhose were hanging in a tree. And they also described it as, like, the wind was blowing and it was moving the pantyhose, which kind of gave
eerie.
it... And that's what they said, gave it more of an eerie, dark feel, like, just because the scene was so gruesome.
Everything about this is so fucked up.
Oh, yeah. It's dark. He's
It's
sicko.
so dark.
He is such a freak. He's such a sicko. So the investigators suspected that this murder was connected to Lana's due to the brutality and the similarities in the scene. And later it was confirmed after they had sent her the evidence to the crime lab in Washington with the FBI. They found these trilobal red fibers on both of the girls, like on like the rope and the scarf like they had and the clothing. Trilobal, it's like a certain shape. I guess it's more of a unique shape for the fiber is what I read.
Like when you look at it under a microscope?
It kind of looks like, it just has 3 different, the shape
like
of it.
3 lobes?
Yeah.
Okay.
And they said it was made of like cheap material, but they didn't really know what could have been car mats. It could have been a carpet, some sort of cheap carpeting. They weren't really sure of what exactly it was, but they connected the murders not only, just from the look of it, but also those fibers became really important in his murders.
That is really important.
Because that's what linked most of his murders together. Mm-hmm. So a little bit about Michelle Sims. She was a former California beauty contestant, raised by her aunt and uncle after the death of her mother. Her father was in prison from 1966 to 1977 and disappeared from her life once he was released from jail. I tried to find out what he did, but, I couldn't find anything on that. I was just curious. She had moved to Fort Pierce, Florida in 1980 with her boyfriend, Tom Sanchez. She had recently become a sex worker to support her drug habit. Tom had stated that, and this is a quote, that Michelle was going through about $1,000 a week for cocaine. She was getting into freebasing. I was trying to get her to quit. It was ruining her life, but she refused to even try and quit or help herself.
What is freebasing?
Freebasing is when you I think it's when you cook it. And is that what I think it's when you coven?
You cook it and smoke it.
And smoke it, yeah. Mm-hmm. So it's like a more intense high, I guess. I guess it's kind of like crack, right?
Is that what they use the spoon for?
No, that's injecting, I would think.
I don't really know, but you can Google that later.
Let us know.
I don't freebase, and I don't do heroin.
I
am not an intravenous drug user, so I'm not sure on that. But that's something fun we can look up later.
Yeah.
So about 6 months before her murder, they had broken up, and she had only been in Tampa for one night before she got murdered.
Oh, my gosh.
The next day, on the 28th, Memorial Day, a 33-year-old woman, Linda Nuttall, was raped in her home after she had put an ad in the classifieds. And her 1 and 4-year-old were home at the time.
Oh, no.
So that's the next day. So again, as we go on,
he's
working fast, and it's just he's escalating. Nothing is feeding this monstrous need that he has. Mm-hmm. It's disgusting. On June 8th, 1984, Elizabeth Lodenbach left her home to take a walk and never returned. Elizabeth lived in a mobile park home east of Nebraska Ave with her mother, stepfather, her brother, and her sister. She worked at an electronics factory with her mother, and they rode to work every day together. She was a quiet girl who enjoyed reading books by the pool and going for walks to get out of the crowded house.
So she isn't somebody that you would say lives a risky lifestyle. This is just
she's different
girl minding her business,
her own
working
business.
at an electronics store,
yeah,
going for a walk.
Mm-hmm. And you'll see here as we go on, they do notice that. And they actually didn't really connect her murder, or they didn't
because
connect
she was different.
Because she was different. So let's see here. She also enjoyed going to a pool parlor near her house, where she would go with her friends, but she also would walk home alone from time to time.
That's brave of him to expand like that, because a lot of times they choose those people living risky lifestyles for that purpose.
He didn't really know, because like I said, she lived near Nebraska Avenue, and she
just by the fact that she was there on Nebraska,
she was walking home. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so he probably just assumed she was, living a riskier life.
That does make sense.
Mm-hmm. So 2 days after she went for that walk and never came back, her mother reported her missing. Why it took her 2 days, I'm not really sure. Probably because she was 22 and she did have a boyfriend. So, maybe she just was used to her kind of going out. I know my mom.
Did people have cell phones at this time, or is that still before cell phones?
This is before cell phones. This is the 80s.
Right, so it's not like she can just text her.
Yeah, and yes. And she was 22. She had a boyfriend. She could do what she wanted. So I guess 2 days later, when she didn't return home, she had called the police because she was actually epileptic and had medication. And her mother started to worry because she knew that she would be out of meds. And that was very unlike her to not show back up or not to have her medication, or at least talk to her and let her know what was going on. The police talked with neighbors, her employer, her coworkers, who all stated she would never get into a car with a stranger. So the police had no leads, and they were completely at a loss. So they really didn't know what happened to her until 16 days later, when they found her body It was badly decomposed in an orange grove in Brandon. She was laying on her back, fully clothed, with no ropes present at the scene. Police stated she was different from the other victims because she was not a drug user, she was not a stripper, she was not a prostitute or a sex worker. They did not connect her murder to him, and they also suspected her boyfriend.
Oh my goodness!
Yes, because he had failed a polygraph examination, so he was in the hot seat for a while.
I feel like I would fail a polygraph test because I would just be so nervous and overthinking everything.
I think I would too. I have an anxiety disorder, and they'd be like, "Is your name Aubrey?" And I'd be like, "Yes." Like, you're lying, because I would just be nervous in general.
Right?
Yeah, I've always thought about that. Where I'd be like, and then how do you turn it down without them being like, "Oh, so you don't want to prove you're innocent?" Like.
Oh my goodness.
It's a mess. It's a whole mess. Yeah, I wouldn't want to take one either, just because I don't think, even if I was being honest, that I'd pass it.
If there's anything I've learned from true crime, though, is immediately call a lawyer.
Yep.
Say nothing.
What's your name?
Just
I
call
want a lawyer.
Yeah.
I agree. And a lawyer would tell you don't take the polygraph. So
right.
So eventually, I guess they luckily they had sent her clothing and evidence to the FBI lab, and eventually they did identify her murder with the other murders because of the trilobal
fibers.
But that took some time. Like, they didn't know that for
it takes
quite
some time
a while
to process that stuff.
So they really had no idea that she was even connected, because again, she wasn't naked, she wasn't bound, she was not, a sex worker.
Somebody was doing their job at that lab whenever they found those fibers and connected the pieces together.
Oh, yeah. No, they actually went to, like, I don't have his name on here. I have it written down somewhere. But he was like, this was his specialty. He was like a fiber specialist in Washington at the J. Edgar Hoover
love
building.
This. I love when the pieces come together
and
like that.
And what's really good about it is, like, this was really good police work for the 80s and for Florida in general. Like, this was actually, they did a real good job. So this is an example of police doing it.
Round of applause for them.
On September 7th, 1984, Vicki Elliott was reported missing by her employer when she did not show up for work at the coffee shop at the Ramada Inn hotel that she worked at. She was picked up on her way to work while she was walking. And
was this also in Nebraska?
I don't know. I know it was close by. If it wasn't on Nebraska, it was close to Nebraska, because he stayed in the same general area.
Because this sounds like another woman just not in a high-risk lifestyle, working at a hotel, minding her own business again.
Well, if they're walking, he's trying to pick them up, and he's seeing who gets in the car. Yeah, but he's also assuming they're sex workers. She was from Muskegon, Michigan, and she actually had planned on moving back to go to school to become a paramedic. She had a plane ticket bought and everything for October 5th. Actually, okay, so they would not know about her until he actually got arrested, and he told them about her.
Really?
So she was never found. She was killed then, but never found until after his arrest. But she was the next victim. I just did it in a timeline so you guys could see how he was progressing.
So how many are we at right now?
We're at the fourth victim. The fourth murder. Yeah, he's working quick. I mean, it's
so many.
Yeah.
In a span of like a couple weeks.
Yeah. The next victim was Chanel Devin Williams. She was 18. Oh, this was on October 7th. She had recently moved to Tampa from Bartow, Florida. She had just started sex work and was living with a friend at a $14 a night motel off Nebraska Ave. So her and her friend had like this deal, like if one was in the room, the other one would just go for a walk. And so that's what she was doing. Like her friend was in the room, so she was just trying to kill time while her friend made her money. And she was walking down Nebraska Ave when a man pulled up and asked her, if she wanted a ride. So she got in the car, and instantly he just started beating her when she got in the car.
Wow.
He bound her hands. That was kind of his MO. As soon as they got in the car, he would bind them and then take them somewhere else. So he would attack them and tie them up right away. He continued to beat her, and then he drove her to an entrance road of a cattle ranch where he untied her and attacked her. And he attempted to strangle her to death. Mm-hmm. But she fought back pretty hard, and it was taking a long time. So he decided to shoot her in the back of the head, execution style. Because
has he shot anybody up to now? Up to now, he hasn't shot anybody.
This changed the MO a little bit. This changed his style. She was found a week later by a man riding by on a horse, and police had to identify her by fingerprints.
Wow.
They were not sure if she was connected because she was black. Okay. She was, he used a gun, and that was totally different. But they decided to send, but she was found nude, and she was involved in sex work. Mm-hmm. So they did decide to send her clothes to the lab for testing.
He did bind her at one point.
At one point, yes. Yeah, but I think when they found her, she was not bound.
Mm-hmm. But maybe like some of the fibers were on her body.
But that's how they connected these murders. So they did decide to send her the clothing or whatever they had, the evidence there for testing at the FBI lab, and they connected it with the trilobal red fibers.
Trilobal.
So after that, they asked the FBI to help them with a criminal profile to kind of come up with, whatever it was, just kind of get an idea of who he is. The next victim was Karen Beth Dinsfriend, Dinsfriend, Dinsfriend. I don't know. I don't know if I'm saying it right. She was 28. She was a beautiful, intelligent girl born into a wealthy family from St. Petersburg.
Oh, she's wealthy. Mm-hmm. Is this how he gets caught?
Wait and find out. To be continued.
Just going off of patterns of the world always.
Well, she was introduced to drugs when she was in junior high, and her life quickly spiraled out of control after that. She just went downhill. She ended up going to jail after stealing from a bank she was working at by skimming off the top. And while she was in jail, she decided to earn her GED, and she really wanted to get her life together.
Good for her.
So when she came back out, 2 years later, she gave birth to a little girl in Pennsylvania, but unfortunately, within a year, the daughter was court-ordered into foster care, and she had lost custody of her daughter. This caused her to just unravel, and she got into drugs again, where she ended up again in jail. And once again, she decided in jail, I want to clean up and try and get my life together. So she chose to move back to St. Petersburg. She got a job as a hostess, but unfortunately, she started hanging out with her old crowd. And again, like the story that's told over and over, she fell back in the old crowd, and she started picking up her drug habit again. Once she got her drug habit, she started doing sex work to try and support that habit. And she was picked up on Nebraska Ave, where she was badly beaten. The scene was bloody and violent. She was tortured, and a rope was tied around her neck, where she was actually dragged by her neck.
Goodness.
And the medical examiner said that the ligature marks around her neck were made while she was still alive. So it was, again, very brutal.
Fighting.
And it was brutal. Like, he definitely tortured her. On Halloween, a man was operating a backhoe off of 301 and found a mummified figure of a woman. At first, he thought it was a Halloween decoration, and then he realized it was an actual human. The victim was white, about 5 feet tall, weighed about 110 pounds, with shoulder-length, reddish-brown hair, and probably in her early 20s. They didn't have much to go on to connect her with the other murders, but they were not going to leave any stone unturned. They decided that they were going to, again, send her clothes and all that to the FBI lab. And then, because it's not that they were dressed, most of them, but the clothes were around them. So, like, they would collect it. They also made an urgent appeal to the public, trying to find out who she was, trying to get details of who she was.
Did they know how long she had been there? Because you mentioned she was mummified, so...
Well, that's the thing. I thought it was gonna. They
while.
think that she was there. I think I read it was about. They thought she was there for at least 2 weeks, and I thought like mummified. It would
How
be
long
like
does it take to mummify?
But in Florida, with the heat and everything, and depending on this, like, is there water? Like, depending on the conditions, I guess that makes a big difference in like the decomp of the body and what happened.
I didn't realize it could happen so quickly. I just always assumed like mummies, like mummification.
I thought the same thing because they said mummified, and I'm like, she's got to be like the first victim. This is got to be old. But then, no, it's just because of like Florida weather. Like a lot of some of these women, like when they found them, they were like bones almost. Yeah, and they were only out there for a couple weeks at a time.
Florida.
Because of, decomp is serious down here. So, let's see. They made an urgent appeal to the public trying to ID the woman, but it wouldn't be until they caught Bobby Joe that they would know her identity. And she was a sex worker that went by Sugar that he picked up on Nebraska Ave. Okay, so here's his downfall. So, on November 3rd, he drove by a girl. Her name was Lisa McVeigh. She was a 17-year-old girl who lived with her grandmother, and she worked at a Krispy Kreme donut shop. She worked a lot because she liked to try and stay out of the house. So she picked up a shift, and she had worked a double that day, and she got out at 2:30 in the morning. So she was riding her bike home when a man in a maroon car had spotted her. And he had drove by her first, and then he had turned around, and he had parked behind a van, or he parked his car, and then he was hiding behind a van, waiting for her to ride by. He grabbed her by her hair and pulled her off her bike. So he kind of like just blitz attacked, like just totally snuck up on her.
So fast.
Ripped her right off the bike. Yeah. He was just out there prowling, saw her, took her off the bike. He dragged her through the parking lot. Oh, he held a gun to her and told her he would kill her if she wasn't quiet. After that, he forced her into his car, made her take off her clothes, where he blindfolded her and forced him to perform oral sex on him. After he told her to keep her eyes closed while he was driving, even though he still had her blindfolded, and he drove to his apartment on Fowler Ave. While they were driving, she was trying to be as attentive as possible. Like she was just following what he said to do because she was trying to live, but she was also trying to be as observant as possible. So she was trying.
I wonder why he decided to take her to his apartment. I don't think that he's done that with the others.
No, he didn't. So he decided to take her to the apartment. But he also knew she wasn't a sex worker because it was clear that she was just a young girl riding home from work.
Yeah.
Like she had her uniform on. So I don't know. Maybe that kind of changed something for him too. I have no clue. But so he took her to the apartment. When they arrived, he helped her put on her shirt and her pants, but he left her underwear, shoes, and socks in the car and walked her up 2 flights of steps to 2 flights of carpeted steps. Now, I read somewhere that it was green carpeting, and then I read it was red carpeting on the steps. Does it really matter? I'm not too sure, but I just figured I'd share that. Once they were in the apartment, he raped her again, and then he took her into the shower where he washed her hair. Afterward, he blow-dried her hair. Like, he brushed it.
This?
He brushed it, and he blow-dried it, and then he made her go lay on his waterbed. Yeah, it totally did.
Weird.
He's such a creep. He turned off all the lights, and so she couldn't see and removed the blindfold. So it was pitch black. She couldn't see him.
Ew.
Which, to me, something about that is so scary. I'm afraid of the dark. That freaks me out so bad.
Me too.
Yeah. Ugh. But he still held the gun against her skin to, like, remind her that the gun was there. I have a quote he said to her. "That's just to let you know I still have my gun," is what he said to her. So icky.
Oh, I hate this guy.
He tied her legs, but loosely, so he could still, rape her. And he continued to sexually assault her. And he was calling her babe.
Ew.
Yeah.
That's so disgusting.
So he was like talking to her and like calling her babe. And like, so this is totally different than the other women. So gross. He is such a creep. Oh, one of the things she did notice, though, when he tied her together, he used like loose cloth strips, and she had made notice that he had already had them like prepared. So that's something that stuck out to her.
Loose cloth
like he didn't
strips.
rip anything. That he had like he was tying her up with like these cloth strips that he had already had there. So she was very observant. She was like, what's it, hypervigilant? Is that what? Like she was just super observant, which is kind of what helped her.
That's amazing, because I feel like in a situation like this, I don't know if I would be able to be cool enough to be hypervigilant.
Yeah, she was definitely hypervigilant, and just she's got that analytic personality, I guess. After he was done for the night, he said thank you to her.
Ew.
Yeah, and then he went to sleep.
I hate him.
He's so gross. He is so gross. He is the biggest creep. So she was afraid that he was testing her, like that he was not really asleep. So she just laid awake all night. And in the morning, before the sun came up, like I guess it was still too dark, but it was morning when he woke up. He blindfolded her again.
It's so weird to me that like it feels like he's kind of nice. I don't want to say like really nice, but like quote unquote nice to her compared to the other victims.
Oh, he's much nicer to her than the other victims.
I also remember that you mentioned that she's 17, right? Wasn't his wife 17 whenever they got married?
I don't think she was 17. They met when they were 13.
Yeah, but
his
when they
mom
got
was
married,
17 when she
weren't
got
they
married.
17?
I don't think so.
Okay.
No. But his mom was 17 when she got married. Yeah, no, I think they were like 21 when they got married. So, yeah. But still, no matter what.
Scratch that then.
And the weird thing is that he dated that 17-year-old girl.
Him.
It's just, the mommy issues and everything's just weird. Okay, so he put the blindfold back on her and he just kept talking to her and like saying, like, he's like, I don't know why I did this to you. You're such a nice girl. And yeah, it was weird. So she talked to him, making up like a fake name, and she gave him some fake story, like that her dad was sick and that he needed her and that she was the only one that could take care of him. So she was trying to connect with him, like while he was, being nice or whatever, and just trying to, but she didn't want to give him her real information.
Yeah.
And she had said that he would mood swing a lot, often being really nice one minute and then being really mean and handling her like super rough and being aggressive with her. But it was just like back and forth.
I wonder if he was schizophrenic.
They said he wasn't. They never
really.
No, he had a lot of head
Perhaps
injuries,
bipolar.
and that's part of like when you have a head injury. That's something that can, like, I think it's the frontal lobe when it gets damaged. That controls your personality and like your rage and your emotions, like your emotion control, really. So if he's probably got brain damage. Like, let's be real. This is
CTE.
He's probably had CTE, some serious brain damage going on. Like he had a head injury like every year of his life. So, and then after that last accident is when they noticed a very significant change in his aggression and everything. Because again, his wife was with him from the time she was 13. And if he was never aggressive with her until after that, like you think he would have been aggressive beforehand. You know what I mean?
Right.
So she was telling, all right, so finally, she asked if he eventually let her go to the bathroom. And at first he was standing there and she asked him if he could please close the door. And he did it. So when he closed the door, she took off her blindfold, looked around, and she decided to leave her fingerprints everywhere in case she got out.
So smart.
Yep. She had decided to leave her fingerprints everywhere, like just so that way she could tell them,
I was there.
I was there and have proof. So she's on top of it. She was just really, really like sharp. And at one point too, he did because again, he'd mood swing. He like fed her at one point, like before he opened the door when she was down the bath. She put the blindfold back on, and like he gave her like some gross sandwich or whatever. But like he fed her.
Yeah.
And then he like made her go back to the bed, and then after that, he stopped tying her legs together. He let her just walk freely.
Wow.
Yeah, it's so weird. It's just so strange.
How long has he kept her at this point?
I know how long he kept her in total. I don't know at this point how many hours have gone by, but I mean, they had already gone to bed and woke up.
Yeah,
so
like
at least
day 2.
12 or something. Yeah, so this is like, now it's the 4th. Or maybe it's I don't know. She was only there for 2 days. It was 26 hours total that he kept her.
Okay.
Yeah. So then he just kept her in his room for the rest of the day. And then at 2:30 in the morning, he said it was time to get going. He put her back in the car.
Oof.
And while she was getting in the car, like, she hit her head. And he said to her, "I'm sorry, babe. I should have guided you in."
So weird.
It's so gross. Like, something about that freaks me out, too. It's so disgusting. So he started driving, and he asked her if he could trust her not to run while he went to the ATM to get money to go to the gas station. So she said, yeah.
Sure.
But while she was in there, because he would recline the seat back, and she had the blindfold on, so she could see underneath her blindfold.
Yeah.
So she was trying to, like, she looked around the car. She was taking note of, like, what the car looked like. She was trying to read street signs. She was trying to see, like, as much as she could, and she was trying to remember it. Yeah, she was trying to remember all that to tell the police if she made it out alive, because she was dead set on living at this point. So on the dashboard, you could see that it said the word Magnum. So, like, that's something she stored away. Finally, he pulled into a church parking lot, and he told her that he didn't want to let her go, that he might just keep her. He didn't want to let her go, but he might just keep her. Then he hugged her and he kissed her. He told her that he hopes
He's disgusting.
No, he hopes her father gets better.
Ugh.
Yeah. Then he told her to wait a few minutes before taking off her blindfold and to take care. He literally told her to take care and then drove off.
So he just left her there and drove off?
He let her go.
Wow.
Yeah. She ran home and got there around 4:30 in the morning and called the police right away. And she gave such great detail about the apartment and the car, even though she had the blindfold on. And the police were, like, shocked. At first, they didn't want to believe her. They thought she was, like, full of it. And then after a while, they ended up believing her. So it was, like, really rough at first. Like, they thought she was just making it up, that she had stayed out all night. Because you know how, it's a runaway. Oh, kids. Yeah, they thought that she was making it up. And then finally, eventually, another cop, I can't remember who it was.
The fact that you have to have so much fucking proof to be believed.
Exactly. But she was on it because she left her fingerprints and she was taking every possible, like, mental note. I even read in one source, but I didn't know how accurate it was, so I didn't add it into the story, that she tried to leave, because she was, like, on her period. She tried to leave blood in the car. But I only read that in one place, and then I didn't see it anywhere else. But, again, she was still trying to, like, leave proof that she was there. Oh, and before he drove away, that's the other thing. He had given her, like, her shoes and stuff. He gave her stuff back.
He really fucked up with this.
This was his stuff, yeah. I mean, lucky for her, because she lived, but, like, something about her, because she was, I think, she was young. She wasn't a sex worker. She wasn't a drug user.
She was different to him in some sort of way. Like, I feel like she reminded him of someone.
Yep, she got to him. So, luckily, she was able to make it. So eventually they ended up believing her, and they started to suspect maybe it was linked to the murders, but they weren't sure. So they sent her clothing and stuff to the FBI to be, analyzed. In between that time, after her, on November 6th, a woman, Virginia Lee Johnson, who was 18, a woman was riding a horse through a field, and she came across decomposing body parts.
Oh my God. So they didn't immediately catch him after her?
Well, after this, yeah. I mean, I think they just found 2 more after, but I think they were killed beforehand.
Okay.
And they just found their bodies after. Decomposing body parts. She was actually like a horse ride, like an instructor. She was with a student. Yeah. And they came across decomposing body parts. So they rode off, called the police. Once they got there, they could see that the murder had been violent and that she was bound and strangled. They collected the evidence, and due to the similarities, they sent it to the crime lab in Washington, which confirmed that it was connected. Mm-hmm. And at this point, they decided to have a joint task force. They had 4 different, police departments. They had the TPD, the Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office, the Pasco County Sheriff's Office, and it says FDLE, which I forgot to look up what that was. Can you Google that?
Oh, I know. That's the Florida Department of Law Enforcement.
Okay.
Law Enforcement.
Okay. Good job, Kevin. So basically, this was like they all came together. They were, because usually police departments, everyone is like, they're petty and they're like, they don't want to get the credit. Yeah, they don't want to work together. They get really, like, their egos are so big. But in this case, they all came together. They created a task force, and they were like, they were dead set on getting him. On November 12th, a sign painter was working and found a badly beaten body where part of her nose was missing. Like, she was so beaten that, like, they couldn't really tell what she looked like. Her name was Kim Marie Swan. She was 21. And again, he had left her. She was bound, strangled, and left in the same position with her legs spread far apart.
I hate that he does this. Yeah. It's so demeaning and degrading to the person. That's the whole point.
But that's the point
for him,
is to degrade them. So those 2 were found after Lisa's abduction. They had found those 2 more bodies, and then moving forward, she had given such detail, at least they were able to start moving forward a little bit. They were able to connect the fibers with the make and model of the car because she saw that it was Magnum or whatever. They were able to connect those fibers. And with the description of his apartment and, like, the general area, because she gave street signs and different things she saw and mentioned that he went to an ATM, the task force divided into teams and were given, like, certain areas to search, and they were looking for the car and the description of the apartment. Like, they were trying to find the matching apartments. They also subpoenaed several banks for their ATM transactions between the 2:30 in the morning and I don't know why I said it that way, 2:30 in the morning and 4:30. They got a printout from the DMV all the way, like, they sent someone all the way to Tallahassee to get a 15-page printout of everyone that owned a Dodge Magnum. That's what he had.
That's what it was. I was going to say, what kind of car is a Magnum? I don't know cars, but I didn't know.
So finally, the first big payoff came when 2 detectives, while they were driving around trying to, like, look for the apartment, look for the car, they came across a Dodge Magnum. So they pulled him over, and they were instructed to tell him that the car fit a description of a robbery. So they asked him if they could take his picture, and he agreed, because they're like, oh, if it wasn't you, we just need a picture to confirm it wasn't you. We just had to pull you over and check it out. They took his license, and they took all his information down. So they had his name, his birthday, his address. I'm surprised
that he was so, like, okay.
Well, they just pulled him over. They just said, oh, we're just looking, your car matched description of a robbery. We just had to check it out. Oh, he wasn't at the robbery. So he was like, sure. He didn't think too much of it. I mean, if a cop was like, can I take your picture? I'd be like, no. But times are different. Got all of his information, and then finally, between getting his information, the DMV paperwork, and the ATM records, on page 14 of those DMV records, they found his name. And they also found that the bank records confirmed that he used his bank card at 3:49 a.m. the same night that Lisa McVeigh was dropped off at that church. So trifecta, he hit, they finally had a name, and it matched everything they were looking for. So with that, let's see here. Oh, and that with Bobby Joe Long's, so with that, they got his criminal history because they knew who he was. They pulled him up. They saw he had, different rape charges, even though he got away with it, but they could still see all that.
A pattern.
And then he was also on probation for that child, for that girl in Tampa. And so they had everything. So between that, everything they had, they were able to get a a warrant for his arrest, an affidavit for, they drew up an affidavit for his arrest and warrants for his apartment and his, for his permanent car.
Good.
Yep. So on November 16th, Bobby Joe Long was arrested and at a movie theater near his house. Like when he went, they were tailing him and they saw him go in to see, I think it was a Chuck Norris film.
So this is what he did on his time off, just like go to the movies.
He went to the movies alone to see a Chuck Norris film.
He deserved it.
And I guess when he came out is when they got him. And, they took his car. They started doing I guess they were going to take him to his apartment to search the house, and he asked them if they could do it without him there. So because he gave them consent, he let him in, and then they took him to the police department. So once he was at the police department, he consented to an interview. He signed like a consent to interview form, and he ended up admitting to the kidnapping. When confronted about the murders, now this took time. They got his story. His story was like, poor me, blah, 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 whatever it was about Lisa. I don't know why I did it. It was just weird. So then they asked him about the murders, and he denied everything, and he asked to go to the bathroom. So they took him to the bathroom, and when he came out, the detective continued to tell him, like, we've got this evidence, basically laying out, we've got all this evidence against you. And with that, he finally sat back, smiled, and said, and I quote, "I guess you've got me. Oh, I guess you've got me good. I guess you've got me good." Then he confessed to the murders, even the ones that they hadn't connected yet. So that's when he told them, even about Vicky, Elliot, and like the other ones that he had. Yeah, he just spilled everything pretty much.
I like when they do that.
Me too.
That's what I was going to say. That ties a lot together for a lot of people.
So in April of 1985, he was convicted of first-degree murder for Virginia Johnson and sentenced to death. Later that year, he pled guilty to 8 other murders and received 24 life sentences.
24.
In 1986, he was sentenced to death by, it says electrocution for the murder of Michelle Sims, and confessed to a total of 10 murders in the end. So I guess, like, I just kind of condensed that into a couple sentences because basically his court hearings went on and on. Like they made all kinds of deals. That he went to court on and off for a very long time. It was really confusing because, like, it would be a whole nother episode to even go through the court stuff because of how the deal, like, they made a deal. Like, it was insane. I can't even describe it to you of, like, how long this went on. He kept going back to court for years and years and years. He was finally executed by lethal injection on May 23rd, 2019. So it went on for, like, a really long time.
2019. That wasn't even that long ago.
Exactly.
And he was originally arrested when?
84.
What?
Mm-hmm. I told you, because his court stuff, he just kept going back to court for different things. It was like, because also when you get a death sentence, it automatically gets appealed in federal court. That's just the rule. So when they appeal it in federal court, they were like, this is when, like, it's kind of got really messy and ugly. There were certain charges that they dropped, and then they got, it was like this whole long court battle, and, like, it explains why it took until 2019 to actually execute him.
Oh my gosh.
Yes, it was, like, insane. Like, I was reading it, I'm like, I can't go into all this detail, or we will have to have a whole nother episode just on court.
Kill him already.
Yeah. Well, Lisa McVeigh and Linda Nuttall, who was also the other survivor, they actually watched his execution. Now, some fun facts. Lisa McVeigh grew up. Now, she actually, part of the reason she survived and was so in tune with her instincts and how to survive, she lived with her grandmother, but she was being sexually abused by her grandmother's boyfriend for years, where he would hold a gun to her head and rape her. So with him holding a gun to her head,
so it was nothing new for her.
She was kind of, she was kind of already used to that kind of situation where she didn't panic.
That's why she wanted to work all the time to get out of the house.
She knew how to handle him. So her instincts were already sharpened for a very sad reason, but also it helped her in the end. Like, she actually, in some of the things she said that, like a quote of hers was, she was talking how she was glad it happened to her because she doesn't think another 17-year-old would be able to handle it like she did.
Angel face doll.
And the other thing was that she had, the night before she was kidnapped, she had written a suicide note.
Really?
And she was planning to take her own life. And during this whole thing, during that night, she had decided, I am going to live.
Wow.
And she wanted to live. So part of, like, so it just, yeah. So in the end.
My heart is broken for her.
So she grew up. She survived this. She grew up and she became a sheriff. She is part of the Tampa Sheriff Department.
What a bad bitch.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, she is. She's married now. She's got children. She has a whole life, but she helps, survivors in her everyday life.
Shout out to her.
Shout out to her. Yeah, she is like a bad bitch, for real. Yep. So that is the story of the disgusting Bobby Joe Long.
What?
Also, the classified ad rapist. He is disgusting. I'm so done with him. I'm so
I
glad.
can tell that you didn't enjoy going into it that deep, but you did kind of.
I did, yeah. I mean, I really wanted to focus more on the victims than him. Like, that's why I kind of gave more detail.
He's garbage.
Because he's a garbage human. And you know what? Like, and a lot, like, people always want to shame the mom. And I'm not saying, like, okay, his mom, questionable, some of the things. But also, it's like, when do you take responsibility for your own actions?
It's not her fault.
Everyone.
There's a lot of mothers that are struggling to get their kids along. And those children don't end up becoming serial killers.
When do you take responsibility and stop blaming mommy?
Oh, yeah.
You know, clearly it wasn't mommy's fault. You were, like, screwed up from the beginning. And then on top of it, there was a lot of head injuries. So
yep.
I think that had a...
Bobby was clumsy.
Yeah. Bobby was very clumsy. But yeah, so
That was amazing.
Thank you.
Good job.
Great story.
Yeah.
Well, now the question is, do you think he really did it?
Fuck yeah, he did it.
No, I think it's a mistake.
I hate him.
Was it the
hate
KKK?
him so much.
Gross. He's so gross. And you know, I really feel bad. Like, I always feel bad for the ex-wife or the kids, especially the kids, because it's like, it's not their fault. But, like, even for his ex-wife, like, how how devastating. Like, she knew him from the time she was 13. You know what I mean?
She felt like she knew him well.
Like, of all people, like, you really think you know him.
She's like, I grew up with him.
Yeah, and then, like, he gets the head injury, which is like, you're already mourning, like, the loss. It's like almost like he died and a new person came in. But then, on top of it, this happened. So, it's crazy. Oh, another thing I read was that, like, I guess after he had confessed, he did request that he call Cynthia and let her know before she found out through the news.
Really?
So he did call and, like, drop that bomb on her.
Oh, my goodness.
I wonder what
Imagine
that
getting
call
that
was
phone
like.
call.
Yeah.
By the way, I've killed a few dozen people.
Pretty much it's how it went down. And she was
And I
like,
want you to know before you find out through the media.
pretty much that's pretty much what happened. Yeah. Isn't that horrible? So, yeah, I felt so bad for his kids. I felt so bad for, like, that's really shitty, really crazy. I can't imagine getting that phone call. Ugh.
Is that courtesy?
I don't know. I mean, in a way, I guess. But I don't know.
I don't know what to make of this man.
No, he's disgusting.
He's disgusting.
But he's now dead. So that is the end of him. Wow.
Thank you so much.
You're
welcome. That was a really good story.
Thank you.
Very
I liked the triumphant end.
I love a good ending.
I know. You really like a good ending. It has to come together.
Closure.
Yeah.
They got to catch them. The confession always helps.
Yeah.
Justice.
Yeah. And there was justice in the end. So. All right. Well, I just want to thank everyone for listening.
Keep coming back.
You can reach out to us at our Gmail at mostlymacabrepod@gmail.com.
And you can also follow us on Instagram at mostlymacabrepodcast.
I'll be putting up some pictures of the victims and Bobby, and you can look on there for that. And we hope you keep listening.
And until next time, bye now.
Bye.